Hi, I'm Anna Napoli for the Finance News Network, and joining me now from ResApp is Managing Director and CEO Tony Keating. Tony, welcome back.
Hi Anna.
So Tony, for investors new to your company, ResApp's developing a smartphone app which you actually cough into and then it helps to diagnose and manage respiratory disease. How's your business progressing?
Yeah, that's right. What we're doing is we're building digital health solutions that manage and diagnose respiratory disease. Respiratory disease being the most common reason for someone visiting a doctor. Our solution is very unique in that what we use just the common off-the-shelf smartphone. There are no accessories required. We listen to a cough sound or record a cough sound, analyse that cough sound for certain audio signatures and match those signatures to different diseases. We founded the company roughly 3.5 years ago, and we've been primarily focused on the clinical validation of our software. And right now it's a really exciting time because we've gotten great results from that clinical validation and we now move into the commercialization phase for the company.
And you mentioned that respiratory disease is the most common reason for visiting a doctor. Just how widespread is it and what is the current sort of method of diagnosis?
So we estimate that there's around 700 million visits every year that results in a diagnosis of respiratory disease. Most of those occur in your GP's office or your primary care clinic. What happens is you walk into the doctor and the first thing the doctor does is ask you a few questions about your symptoms, put a stethoscope on your chest, listen to your breathing, and if he or she thinks there is something more serious, we'll order a chest x-ray or blood test. So it's really a suite of tests that are used to currently diagnose these diseases. What's important to note is that it's really important for the clinician or the doctor to understand whether it's a lower respiratory tract disease or an upper respiratory tract disease. Lower diseases are much more difficult to diagnose and much more difficult to treat. And so what we're doing is developing tools that fit in with that pathway that the doctor does, going from is it upper, is it lower, or is it a more complex disease?
Let's talk about your app in more detail, starting with the current studies.
So we just finished 2 major pivotal clinical studies for the company. The first was in Australia, run at 2 hospitals in Perth. There we recruited children and diagnosed most of the common respiratory diseases. So we diagnosed 6 respiratory diseases, everything from an upper respiratory tract disease to pneumonia, to asthma, to croup, to bronchiolitis. And we demonstrated very high accuracy of our software compared to a clinical diagnosis. We also just finished a US clinical study run at 3 leading US hospitals, where we again diagnosed children's or childhood respiratory diseases. We diagnosed very accurately lower respiratory tract disease, asthma, and upper respiratory tract disease. And both of those now form a really solid basis for us to take our technology through the regulatory pathways, which allow us to then commercialise.
And talking about the regulatory pathways, how are you going with CE mark and TGA approval?
So for both CE, TGA and FDA, we now have a great data set or a clinical data set to provide the clinical validation. The other part of those submissions is a quality program. And so we've recently received ISO 13485 certification, which tells everybody that we're developing software as a quality medical device, and that is the other part of those submissions. So right now we're in the final stages of combining that clinical data with the quality system to put those through a technical file for CE approval or an FDA de novo submission. And those submissions will be happening shortly. We'll then see responses and we'll engage with the FDA and the notified body for CE over the next few months.
And whereabouts is your company in terms of commercialization?
Right now we need to get regulatory approval to really start selling and be in the market. But we are developing partnerships with telehealth providers. So this is where we see a big commercial opportunity for us, is that by partnering with telehealth providers, we have an instant access to a relatively large market of people using telehealth. And so these are people who are using a video conferencing solution to talk to their doctor. That doctor today doesn't have access to even a stethoscope. So it's very hard for that doctor to make an accurate diagnosis. We provide the ability or the confidence for that doctor to make that diagnosis.
Tony, can you tell us more about your new sleep apnea clinical program?
So sleep apnea is a really interesting opportunity for us. Sleep apnea is one of those unknown diseases. Roughly 3 in 10 men and roughly 2 in 10 women have sleep apnea, and roughly 80% of those people who have sleep apnea don't know they have sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is a pretty serious condition, medical condition. Not only does it cause daytime tiredness, but it also can lead to stroke, heart conditions, type 2 diabetes. So we're really excited about the opportunity and that we've demonstrated that we can diagnose or screen for sleep apnea using a smartphone placed on a bedside table. So essentially a person can go to sleep with their phone on the bedside table and the next morning wake up with an accurate diagnosis of whether or not they have sleep apnea or not. And so we're really excited about that moving forward, and we look forward to more clinical studies and commercialization of that relatively quickly.
Last question now, Tony. Where would you like to see the company this time next year?
So we're at a very exciting stage for the company now as we transition from a very heavy clinical focus into a commercialization phase. So right now we're really looking forward to developing partnerships, going through the regulatory process and then taking this product into the market. But we also have some very interesting programs such as the sleep apnea program, such as the work we're doing with Lockheed Martin in the US, where we're very excited about the next stage of our technology as well.
Tony Keating, thank you for the update.
Thank you.